everybody, it's Tammy and welcome back to the Barnacle Breakdown, where we take a piece of Barnacle media and see how it connects and references the rest of the Barnacle franchise, both before and after release. It's like a sequel to a prequel to an adaptation of a multimedia franchise and promoting a toy line. Today we're breaking down the final installment of the movie trilogy made by Creative Capers, 2005's Barnacle 3, Web of Shadows. This ident of the LEGO logo being assembled out of bricks has been used in LEGO media ever since their first video game LEGO Island in 1997. It will be used for years to come. If you know the last piece of media to use this ident, let me know in the comments. In the prologue to Barnacle Adventure 7, Turaga Vakama intimates to Tahu that the stone used to represent Makuta over the past 4 years of story is not a simple rock, but something more. This movie reveals it is in fact a fragment of the protodermic seal created by the Toa Metru to imprison Pterodax in Legends of Metru Nui. It was removed by Rudaka, who uses it as a conduit to break the seal and release Pterodax. There's an indentation in her armour the exact shape of the fragment, which you have to admit is awfully convenient. Vakama picks it up at the end of the movie. In the novelisation of the film, Turaga Vakama is telling the story to the 7th Toa and the recently promoted to chronicler Hali. The opening narration and flashback to Legends of Metru Nui makes it clear that this entire movie is set before that film's final scene on the shore of Mata Nui. So let's break this down in our first timeline interlude. Since defeating Pterodax, the Great Barrier, the Toa Metru have encountered the exiled Matoran Mavra, an old colleague of Wenoa's, along with his adopted ancient marine Rahi and several Krali robots. Sailed through a tunnel outside of the Great Spirit robot's head and discovered an island on the surface of Agua Magna that they have named Mata Nui. Collapsing said tunnel due to pursuing Vaki, created 6 Toa stones that will eventually be found by Takua to summon the Toa Mata's canisters, travelled through the island's subterranean tunnels and encountered the Rahi Nui, the sentient plant life of Kazani, and the Protodermis entity in an effort to save Nakama from death. The capsized craft seen at the beginning of the movie looks identical to the transport the Toa fled Metru Nui in the previous film. However, this is a completely different craft made of scrap parts and roots from the not entirely dead sapient plant creature Kazani. It's called the Lacan 2. Ding ding ding! The Usul Crab trilogy is complete. Thank you for tuning in to the Crabbers Network. Nuju is particularly annoyed, as in Web of the Visorak he had offered to drive this time, but was rebuffed of course by Matau. The Toa Metru have graciously arrived on the shore of Lei Metru. This scene features a cameo from a herd of Kikanalo, who featured prominently in the previous film. A mutated specimen can be seen in Comic 27. The creature that flies over them is a Lorak, which was developed for an ultimately cut sequence from the previous film. Wenoa mentions that Rahi are kept in stasis in the archives, which was mentioned a lot in ancillary material for 2004. They also contain Borok, however those have not reawoken as there are no Krana nearby, nor have they been signalled to wake. Although the movie implies the Toa Metru were captured almost immediately following their arrival in Lei Metru, that's not quite the case. The first 100 pages of Web of the Visorak lead up to this point, as does the start of the novelisation, and Comic 22. This might actually be the most retold part of the Barnacle story. So let's clear it up with another timeline interlude! In the novel, the Toa encounter Vaki that have been changed due to Makuta causing a power surge, and after investigating the local Vaki hive, retreat to the test track, the Moto Hub, get into a number of altercations between a sonic entity, a mutated Lorak, and some more Vaki, retreat further into the archives, encounter and heal an Ash Bear by giving up some of their Toa power. Throughout all of this, they are being tracked by the Visorak and the Rahaga, and eventually they are captured in the streets of Ta Metru. The Toa Metru are caught by a group of Kilorak, however all Visorak have the ability to use paralysing Rotuka. Their introductory scene is also bloody creepy. In the novels, Wenoa suggests that Visorak can be translated as poisonous scourge as well as stealers of life, and let's face it, both are appropriate. According to Greg Vashti, Kolorak is the name of this specific Kilorak. Nice save, Greg. The language it's speaking is called Visorak. The island they originally came from was also renamed Visorak. Not a very creative bunch, this. The Visorak were first created on that island by Makuta Kiroks. Their first conquest was wiping out the island's indigenous population. One of the island's few survivors would later join the Order of Mata Nui and be named Tobdak. This throne is referred to in the novels as being Makuta's, which implies that he had it installed after assuming the facade of Turaga Duma. There is a giant Matoran S on the wall behind him. There is also a giant statue of Sidorak, as well as an engraving of his face on the doorway. These are more of Nivork's Rahi species from Legends of Metru Nui. Rudaka and Sidorak were summoned by Makuta telepathically from his prison. Rudaka is the viceroy of the Visorak, not the queen. She is a vortex from the island of Exia, or Zia, or Chia, take your pick, and has a history of working with both the Dark Hunters and the Brotherhood of Makuta. Among the individuals she has mutated are the Toa Mangai Nigdiki, the Dark Hunters Silence and Voparak, and some other Toa that we'll get to later on. She is also the subject of so much porn! Sidorak hails from the island of Stelt. The island's caste system sees Sidorak species at the top, Matoran as the middle class, and a couple of lower class species. Dark Hunter Cracker was one of these. Sidorak once applied to join the Dark Hunters, but was unable to prove himself against Gladiator in combat. He joined the Brotherhood of Makuta as a courier and was promoted through a habit of taking credit for others' successes, eventually being promoted to King of the Visorak Horde. The concept of marriage is a purely political concept in the Matoran universe, and Sidorak hopes to make Rudaka his queen to gain status on Zia. The Visorak call this an M&D, mutation and disposal. Lovely. The structure the Rahaga and Toa fly through is a chute support pylon, as seen in the previous film. The Rahaga in the film exhibit a number of non-canon elements, including helicopter blades and headlamps. In the novels, which are canon, they rescue the Toa Hordika on vines. This is also shown in Comic 22. Their movie designs are a modified version of the Turaga model from Mask of Light, which itself appeared to be based mainly off of the 2002 Borok Var set more than any Turaga model. The square spiral pattern on these fountains is identical to the one that will later be found on Toa Ghali's Nuva symbol. Their design also appears to incorporate the Visorak footpiece and are reminiscent of the Seahorse Rahi from Mask of Light. Nongu is an ancient and important city in Barnacle lore, and its mystical key a highly sought after treasure. No, I'm just kidding. Although this joke did have to be adapted to work in the different languages the film was translated into. The Polish version, for example, was made into a King Kong reference. The Toa Hordika's movie designs maintain the eye stalk present on their pre-mutation forms, which makes sense. Speaking of this, I forgot to mention that Nadiki also has this feature in Legends of Metru Nui, which also makes sense as he was also a mutated Toa wearing a mutated mask. The Dark Hunter Savage is another Toa Hordika who was never cured, not even by Matanui in 2010. This scene is perhaps the most audacious sleight of hand ever used by Greg Farshtey to fit expanded universe material into a film. What looks like a continuous scene in the movie is actually split up into two conversations in the novelization to allow the events of the novel Challenge of the Hordika, the animated Search for the Mask of Light miniseries, and 5 comics to occur, during which we have another timeline interlude! Major events include searching for airship parts, the Battle of the Tower of Toa, which includes the return of the Rahi Kraka and Tatara, retrieving fragments of the Makoki Stone, and in turn using it to retrieve the Mask of Light. The novelization for Web of Shadows also features an appendix where Vakama relays the history of the Rahaga once a team of Toa called the Toa Haga, and acted as bodyguards and delegates for Makuta Pterodax. When they discovered that the Makuta were enslaving Matoran, they defected, stole the Mask of Light and the Makoki Stone. However, in the process they were mutated by Rudaka into the bestial Turaga-like Rahaga. This mutated Muaka is a modified Ashbear model from Mask of Light. Norik mentions that Muaka are typically loners, and this meshes well with their set description in 2001, where they are described as working with the Kanera Bull
because Makuta wishes them to do so.
These twin moons appear to be the eye holes that were closed in the previous film. In canon, one is supposed to be the seabed of Neho Bay, the other one is supposed to be under Mount Aihu? In Barnacle Adventure 7 it's said that only one is visible. It's a little bit vague. Okay, so let's talk about this chamber that Rudaka monologues in a little bit, as it's the same one as Makuta Pterodax monologues to himself in whilst presenting as Duma. There was a large pillar there already that formed a mirror of sorts, and that pillar is intact when Rudaka talks to it. This device was also a countdown to Pterodax's plan. Vakama is tied to a Suva shrine that was present in the previous film. Vakama's eyes turn green to incredibly subtly indicate his turn to evil. This is similar to Tahu's eyes turning green in Mask of Light to indicate his succumbing to dark powers. In the sets up until this point, each character within a team had had their own eye colour. In Vakama's case, it is somewhat ironic that his Toa Metru and Hordika set forms both feature green eyes by default, and in 2008, green eyes would be used to denote the good characters and orange to denote the baddies. The Miramax trilogy uses reddish-orange eyes for most characters, with exceptions for prominent earth and ice characters. This is the first time we've seen the gateway to the Great Temple Bridge, but the Toa Metru have presumably passed through here on their previous adventures, including their escape from the city in the previous film. Nakama is the first to voice her discomfort at entering the Great Temple, as she already returned with Garki in Barnacle Adventures 8 when they encounter a Gate Guardian while attempting to retrieve Konoe masks. There's just something odd about hearing a Barnacle character use the phrase tomorrow morning, you know, as if they just remember that they need to take the recycling out or something. The Toa Suva is still raised from when it transformed the Matoran into Toa Metru in the previous film. Nudu's mask scope still appears to have a functioning infrared ability, despite the mask's mutation. The scope will be removed when Nudu transforms into a Turaga, and apparently Sidorak's security system has the same tech. The damage sustained to the Great Temple will eventually be repaired when the Matoran return to Metru Nui. The Tears That Reach the Sky is a stream of protodermis running from the Great Temple that was not there before the Great Cataclysm. This could be due to the protodermis processing facilities inside the Great Temple malfunctioning. This shot during the Toa Hordika's search seems to be a fairly obvious reuse of the Leiwahi jungle from Mask of Light. As far as we're aware, Metru Nui doesn't actually have any areas with this much greenery. Norik and the other Toa Hordika follow the route through Gar Metru, Po Metru, which we see, Onu Metru, and finally to Ko Metru, which also appears to reuse environments from Mask of Light. In the novelisation, the Toa find themselves at the Ko-Metru-Le-Metru border and, after falling into a canal, are taken through an underground chute to Kitongu's lair, where frozen protodermis from the damaged chute actually forms tears that reach the sky. Kind of. Kitongu is technically a Rahi, as he was created by the Makuta using viruses. The rest of his species were killed by Visorak. According to Greg, Kitongu's visible eye is in fact a decoy, and he has a real pair of eyes behind it. I'm honestly surprised they didn't just say Kitongu's mouth was a decoy too, and its entire face is just a printed 1x1 tile like this. Janitor Visorak! Sidorak says that the sleeping Matoran now belong to him, but he's most likely acting just as a custodian until his master can reclaim them. Interestingly, one of the CGI adverts for the Visorak feature a Matoran awake inside one of the pods, and oh my god, it's Vizola! The gates inside the Colosseum have been reshaped into Sidorak's image. He actually looks a lot like Plo Koon from Star Wars. Presumably the hell-shaped entranceway featured in the Battle of Metru Nui playset is on the outside. There appear to be 6 massive light stones on pillars illuminating the Colosseum. Most beings in the Matoran universe have the ability to create Rutuka, although most also require an external launcher to do so. As far as we know, the Visorak do not have a dental plan. Sidorak's herding blade is the only weapon of the 3 Titan characters from 2005 to remain integrated into the character's armour as portrayed in their respective set. Rudaka's catcher claws and Kitongu's spinning shield are presented as external tools in the film. Rudaka and Sidorak's Rotuka launchers can both be seen on their backs. The adaptive floor of the Colosseum absorbs some of the impact from Kitongu's fall. Due to the sheer amount of blunt force trauma caused to Sidorak's head by Kitongu, he is one of the relatively few beings not revived on the Red Star after death. Greg Farshley has said that he would have preferred Matau to join Rudaka, as it was more within his character. However, I do like that it forces Matau to evaluate his attitude and sincerely reach out to Vakama. The golden Visorak that Rudaka rides on is called a Kagarak. They come in different sizes and were released in different forms throughout 2005, although this is probably the Great Visorak from the Battle of Metru Nui playset. Rudaka somehow still has her staff despite just giving it to Sidorak. The novelisation actually gives some interesting insight into the Visorak in this moment. Rudaka would normally outrank Vakama in their eyes, however many of them had just witnessed her luring their leader to his death, and so they decide to abandon her in turn. Despite being freed here, the Visorak Horde ultimately have something of a grim fate. Any that survive the next 1,000 years will be summoned to the island of Artidax by the Toa Mari. Using an artifact called the Heart of the Visorak, our heroes will lead the entire species to their death in a lovely little bit of Bernie Melty genocide that's apparently on the Scroll of Preparation no less, which actually implies that this is Matanui's will, and what the Toa Mari do is engineer a genocide as part of the interventionist policy of a theocratic shadow state. Oh wait, Makuta brings the species back soon afterwards apparently, never mind. This cameo from Pterodax's Shadow Hand shows his teleport power in action. In Time Trap he will use a similar power to teleport Vakama and the Vahi out of the city. Turaga Duma's pod was in fact found by the Toa Hordika at some point during the events of this film, although due to a malfunction he had already awoken. Work started on an online series of comics depicting this in 2005, but the plans fell through. Duma decides to stay on Metru Nui with the Rahaga, and they appear 500 years later in the short story The Dweller Report, as does Kitongu, who assists Vakama during Time Trap and eventually assists the Order of Matanui during the Destiny War. Whilst preparing for Matanui's reawakening, the Toa Nuva will recapture Rudaka and force her to restore the Rahaga to their Toa selves. The Toa Haga go through some interesting stuff, and eventually they, Turaga Duma and Kitongu all emigrate to Sparus Magna. Aside from the Matoran, the airships also include spare Kanoka discs that will eventually run out of energy, and Kanoi, including the Great and Noble masks that will later be sought out by the Toa Mata, and spare powerless masks for the Matoran. The airships themselves will be broken down and used to make shelters on the island. The airships are shown flying through the same hole in the Great Barrier that they used in Legends of Metru Nui. As mentioned previously, the route that they took originally to Matanui has collapsed, so they will probably have to take a different route. Brave of them to assume that there will be space for an airship to pass through though. It wouldn't be until 2010 that the Matanui saga would actually depict the airships above the surface of Aqua Magna, approaching Matanui. That is a creepy nod by Nuju. It's as if he just thought, do you know what would really fuck with these guys? Bird language. Ah yeah. Soon after this farewell scene, Vakama will leap overboard to reclaim the Vahi from the Silver Sea, beginning the events of the novel Time Trap. This is then followed chronologically by the epilogue from Legends of Metru Nui. The events of Time Trap are not shared by Vakama to the other Turaga. This final shot is the last moment chronologically of the trilogy. As mentioned in the first breakdown, this is the same balcony that Mask of Light ended on, although it has taken on some web-like patterning. The Web of Shadows novel actually gives something of an explanation for this. I also want to draw attention to Nathan First's musical score for the entire trilogy. His use of melodic themes and leitmotifs provides its own layer of continuity across the films. I may do a deeper analysis of his soundtracks one day. The Matoran text at the end of the credits reads Sleeping Matoran, Matoran Translator, Set Doctor, Horde Steward, Wardrobe Mistress, The Gaffer, Location Safety, Location Security, Virtual Presence, Visorak Wranglers, and High Wire Stunts. And that is the end of the Barnacle Breakdown for Web of Shadows, and indeed the Barnacle Trilogy. But then, aren't all endings just beginnings, waiting to be born? I really hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching these, and I'll see you soon. Bye! Timeline Interlude!